Well, good morning and welcome to Women in Leadership 2020. My name is Paul Reed, and I'm thrilled to know that more than 600 of you have chosen to spend the next hour with us. I would have preferred to do this in person, looking out across the Centennial Ballroom at your smiling faces, but in these times, a few pivots are necessary, and I'm grateful that through the magic of Zoom, as awkward as it might be, that we could all be together. We launched this program 3 years ago with a single purpose: to create dialogue in our business community about the need, the challenge, and even the successes of getting more women into leadership roles in our community. There can be no debate anymore that organizations that include women in senior management are more balanced, understand their workforces better, and in fact have better results. The challenge is it's hard. It's hard to change cultures. It's hard to recast policies and practices and job descriptions, mentorships and employee advancement practices to meet those challenges. It's hard for men to recognize what they aren't accustomed to seeing. And it's hard, from what I'm told, for women who have worked so hard to make it to the top to reach back down and lend a hand to the next woman. That's why we're here. And it's why, by the way, it's important that men are in the audience today and that men are at the podium today. Because if the uncomfortable truth is that the vast majority of organizations are led by men, the only way to change that landscape is to have male allies in that quest. So thank you, Beck. Thank you, Manny. And thank you to the men who are listening today. We must do our part. Before we start, or with that said, we have a great program ahead. And because we have to recognize this new phenomenon called Zoom fatigue, we're going to try to get this done in about an hour. Before we start, I want to thank our sponsors, without whom we don't get to create an environment for these kinds of discussions. Our major sponsors today are STCU, and we are also thrilled to have as sponsors Avista Corp, Inovio Foundation, and Gonzaga's Women Lead Program. Thank you all so much. And now it is my pleasure to welcome through the magic of Zoom, hopefully, Lindsay Myree, Executive Vice President and CFO at STCU, for a brief sponsor's message. Lindsay?
Hi there. STCU is so pleased to sponsor this year's Women in Leadership event, the first to go digital. As CFO for a financial institution, a position still dominated by men, I feel confident in saying that your ROI will be huge for this free event. Thank you to the Journal for hosting. Numbers are my strength, so I thought I'd share a few numbers with you today. STCU was founded by Spokane educators in 1934, a time when that was one of the few professions available to women. Of the 10 teachers who signed our Articles of Incorporation, 9 were women, a right of the time, a sign of the times. The one man was named president. Today, 61% of our workforce are women, and 70% of our leaders are women. Of 5 C-suite positions, 3 are held by women. At any given time, about 10% of our staff are advancing their education through a generous tuition reimbursement effort. Internal leadership development training and resources are second to none here. Looking at Spokane is changing as well. One indicator is the list of Leadership Spokane alumni. Graduating class of 2020, 25 men and 27 women, including Adrienne Fisher, a leader here at STCU. In the first graduating class in 1983, we had 20 men and only 6 women. But of those women, that included Phyllis Campbell, who became the first president and CEO of any bank in the state of Washington, and now is a senior executive for JP Morgan Chase in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, the nation's largest bank. Looking nationwide during the COVID-19 pandemic, the Wall Street Journal reported that this pandemic is disproportionately impacting women's careers. We're still the primary caregivers for children. While women own about half of the small businesses nationwide They start with less money than those that were started by men, leaving them particularly vulnerable to external disruptions. At STCU, as in organizations all over Spokane, we're showing extreme flexibility to assist all employees, women and men, to help them meet the challenges caused by the pandemic. While still serving our communities and our 207,000 members, we're here to assist you as well.
Now, thank you, Lindsay, by the way, and thank you, STCU. And now I'm very honored to introduce you to two young women who I'm quite sure will be future leaders in our community. They are both with Girl Scout Troop 3327. Please welcome Girl Scout Ambassador Addie DeCaro and Brownie Ariana DeCaro to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Take it away, Addie and Ariana.
Turn.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. What a blessing. And now let's get to the program. Our first presenter in what we are calling Tales from the Front is Patricia McCray, president of KHQ Incorporated and Coles Montana Media, which serves TV markets across Eastern Washington and Montana. Patricia also serves as oversees a regional sports network that serves local teams throughout Washington, Idaho, and Montana. Patricia joined KHQ in 1993 as news director and was named president in 2008. She graduated from Washington State University with a degree in communications. She has worked in the broadcast industry for 37 years, mostly in TV management, and her career has taken her from California to Nevada to Miami before settling in Spokane for the past 25 years. Patricia also serves on the board of the National Association of Broadcasters, is vice chair of the Fox Network Board of Governors, is past chair of the Washington State Broadcasters Association, and is on the board of Greater Spokane Incorporated. Please welcome my colleague and friend, Patricia McCray.
Hello. Well, good. I guess it's morning still. Good morning, everyone. And I just want to say that I am honored to be a part of this and celebrate women, because we need to believe in ourselves and celebrate who we are. You know, I really believe that there is no formula or a how-to manual within any organization to ascend the corporate ladder. What worked for me 30 years ago, I really believe still works for me today. You know, no matter if the economic times are weak or strong, or if technology continues to change the world, or even if we're in the middle of a pandemic like we are now, I've learned that climbing the leadership ladder is all about being true to yourself. And that leads me to this. And Marty, I want to thank you for this, because it's all about wear the red dress. As a young executive 30 years ago, I had the opportunity to attend one of my first conferences in broadcasting. I was excited and didn't even think about what to wear other than it had to be professional. So I pulled a dress out of my suitcase, threw it on, and went on my merry way. When I walked into the meeting room, there I was with all men in dark suits, and me standing alone like a flashing light in a bright red dress. At that moment, I wanted to, grab and wrap one of the dark blue tablecloths around me. I felt as if every eye was staring at my dress, but they really weren't looking at the color at all. Instead, they were looking at a young woman standing out in a man's environment. I chose that red dress without giving it any thought, but today I would think about it, and I would purposely wear red. The point is, be yourself. Celebrate the skills that you were born with as a woman. Don't think you need to act like and dress like a man to advance. I've learned to use my personality traits of being female as an advantage as I've advanced. As a woman, we are emotional. We need to use that passion for promotion. And let's face it, a lot of us has probably experienced being called a little bitchy at times in the workplace. That's okay. Use that aggressiveness to show strength and decisiveness when you have to deal with confrontation. Most women I know are very organized. Don't hide those skills. Organization is very powerful. Use it to show off multitasking skills and let those around you know you can think on your feet and make thoughtful, timely decisions. Women want compassion, and we always want to talk things out. And I would imagine all the men on this webinar are probably shaking their heads. Yep, women want to talk things out. We know how it feels as a woman to receive compassion. So use that in the work environment and give it back. Use your compassion as a woman to understand your employees. Another God-given trait I was born with is being nosy. I always want to know what's happening, no matter what and where. So I take the trait and I turn it into being inquisitive. Throughout my career, I've never just stayed in my lane. I asked questions about other things in other departments. I've always been inquisitive about the business and sales side of broadcasting as I was rising through the ranks as a young journalist. I asked questions of the engineers. Why does certain technology work the way it does? And why is it important to the structure of what our business is today? So along the way, being nosy and inquisitive has served me well when opportunities for advancement presented themselves. Not knowing everything, but enough about a lot of things can earn you a promotion. I have been in broadcasting my entire career. I began as a journalist, as I said. I never set out to be a manager or a senior executive, but here I am, 37 years later, sharing thoughts about leadership in the important role as a senior executive, and I just happen to be a woman. Men and women are wired to think different. Don't be afraid of that in the work environment. Embrace it. Advancing to the C-suite is a discovery process. Learn to listen and listen to learn, and wear the red dress.
Thank you so much, Patricia. That was great. Our next speaker is Whitworth President Beck Taylor. Beck became Whitworth's 18th president in July of 2010 after serving as Dean and Professor of Economics at Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama, and as an Associate Dean for Research and Faculty Development at Baylor University in Waco, Texas. During his decade at Whitworth, he has spearheaded the university's 10-year strategic plan, which seeks to further elevate the school among the leading Christian universities in the country. His tenure has been highlighted by a renewed emphasis on community involvement, and I can attest to that as I've been honored to serve with Beck on community boards. He's also known for his efforts to create the College of Arts and Sciences, the School of Continuing Studies, and a new honors program, as well as Whitworth's first professional doctoral programs. And he led the school to big enhancements in buildings, campus infrastructure, and its largest ever fundraising campaign. Taylor and his wife of 28 years, Julie, have 3 children aged 24, 22, and 13. Please join me in welcoming Beck Taylor.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is wonderful to be with you today. Patricia, thank you for those inspiring words. Paul, thank you for the Journal of Business and for your invitation to be here today. I've been asked to say just a few words this morning about organizational culture and how that culture can impact the opportunities and the challenges that women have in leadership. I think it shows great wisdom and forethought on the part of our seminars organizers to spend a little time on culture, because it's so critical to achieving the goals that I know that we all have for ourselves and for our organizations. As I say those words, organizational culture, I'm immediately reminded of the truism in business and leadership, I think first attributed to management guru Peter Drucker, that reminds us that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think that quote reinforces the idea that the culture of our organizations is the greatest determinant of success, no matter how inspired or how effective our strategies might be. Culture is simply the air that we breathe. Drucker's quote also reminds us that culture and strategy are two very different things. But in a healthy organization, culture and strategy reinforce each other. They speak to each other. And in the healthiest organizations, culture and strategy work hand in hand to ensure that the organization accomplishes its mission and vision. But perhaps many of us have worked for organizations in which that congruency between culture and strategy is simply not present. And we've all personally witnessed culture snacking on strategic goals each morning for breakfast, undermining morale and ultimately the organization's ability to perform. In the context of promoting women in leadership, and as a simple example just to get us started, an organization that sets as a strategic goal the population of the management suite with a healthy proportion of women, but in which men are consistently allowed to engage in sexist and illegal conduct that undermines the role of women and inhibits their success, much less acknowledges their humanity. That organization will never succeed in achieving its strategic goals, no matter how many women are promoted into leadership positions. So in the time that I have left, I want to share with you some ideas about how we can align culture and strategy in ways that contribute to our organizations and to the professional lives of women leaders, both current and future, with whom we work. The first point I have is that I want to make is that diversity, in this case, the ability to tap into the unique perspectives and experiences of women within our organizations, that diversity cannot be summed up by composition alone. That is, the ability of our organizations to tap into the limitless power of women is not simply a function of how many women occupy leadership roles. Composition doesn't equal diversity, but it sure helps. Here's another way to put it. The gendered composition of our leadership teams is a necessary condition for creating a culture that supports women in leadership, but it's far from sufficient. My simple example earlier of the sexist company proves my point. So in order to align our strategic goals with our organizational culture, how then can we build cultures that squeeze every ounce of value out of the compositional strides that we may be making? My first suggestion is that we name the issue. Too often leaders, especially male leaders, are uncomfortable talking about gender issues, no matter how dedicated they might be to creating opportunities for women to climb the leadership ladder. It's really hard for an organization that aspires to promote women into leadership to reach its goals without speaking explicitly about the opportunities and challenges associated with those commitments. So for example, here at Whitworth, my leadership team, approximately half of whom are women, regularly discuss with each other and with our employees our institution's goals, but also when and where we failed in our efforts. Being honest and being transparent about organizational limitations and failures opens the door for truth-telling among those who want the organization to succeed. So recently, because of Whitworth's commitments to having open and honest conversations about gender equity, we've begun to flesh out how the current pandemic and the often disproportionate toll of working and schooling from home has on women in particular, and how that might be impacting cultural expectations about performance and promotion here at the university. So what new policies and standards can be put in place during this extraordinary time to ensure that women are not overly burdened, nor held to unreasonable and frankly often sexist expectations? And then how can we ensure that those misplaced expectations don't limit the future opportunities for women to rise within the university? Those are difficult but necessary conversations to have now within all of our organizations. But they don't happen unless a culture is built in which leaders name the challenges and then open the floor for honest and transparent introspection and truth-telling. This important work doesn't happen without enormous intentionality. So I would ask, are leaders within your organization vocal supporters of gender equity, And do they speak publicly and often about the issues? A second cultural attribute that I want to emphasize are the underlying beliefs within the organization about gender and the roles of women. In today's world, it might be commonplace or just simply more comfortable to assume that everyone within the organization has a 21st century enlightened view of gender and the respective roles of men and women. That would be a mistake. We know from social scientific research that both men and women have diverse views and understandings about the roles of women in society. Again, this is where bold and courageous conversations need to happen within the organization to ferret out underlying and often unspoken biases and beliefs about women. Are there key leaders or other members in your organization whose underlying beliefs about women in the workplace are undermining your ability to promote opportunities for women to succeed? I work for a faith-based organization. It won't surprise you to know that there are diverse views and perspectives in various faith traditions about the roles and responsibilities of women. And that is true at Whitworth. But that diversity of opinion isn't limited just to religiously affiliated or missioned organizations. It's true of all of our organizations. But let me give you an example of how this plays out in my own organization. All of the faculty members at the end of their courses survey their students about their students' experiences within the course. These student evaluations are an important part of the evaluation process at most universities, including Whitworth. Because Whitworth pulls its students from a broad and diverse set of geographic, racial, ethnic, international, socioeconomic, and religious populations, should it surprise us that students at Whitworth vary widely in their underlying beliefs about their experiences with women in powerful, authoritative positions? And should it surprise us that some students will allow their conceptions of women to influence their evaluations of female instructors? Or should we expect that in certain historically male-dominated professional fields like engineering or computer science and business, that female faculty members in those areas might suffer from implicit bias among students or outright gender discrimination? It turns out that in studies from across higher education, they confirm the existence of such biases. So the question must be asked within my organization about how we are simultaneously taking those biases into account when evaluating female professors. And just as importantly, and this is really important, how are we challenging students with opportunities to change their perceptions and address their underlying beliefs? I've used my industry as an example, but I want you to ask the same question about your industries as well. Do basic and foundational beliefs about the roles of women influence how your organizations address the often disparate experiences that women have, particularly within the evaluative systems that in place that determine upward mobility and success? The last point that I want to make this morning about aligning organizational culture with strategy echoes to my earlier point that in the healthiest organizations, strategy and culture reinforce each other in ways that elevate gender diversity. And that encouragement is to take gender equity as seriously as other business goals. In fact, and this is my point, make gender equity a business goal. Don't push this important issue to the margins of the organization's strategic plan or make it a convenient footnote in the annual report. True alignment of strategy and culture occurs only when efforts to achieve gender equity and the accountability metrics that follow are central to an organization's self-conception about performance. Within Whitworth's strategic plan, we have a goal, and I'm quoting here, to demonstrate courageous leadership in an increasingly diverse world, end quote. That goal is not in the plan's appendix, nor does it reside in a separate but parallel diversity action plan, nor is it assigned to a special subcommittee of the board. This goal is front and center as a strategic goal of the university. And within that goal, we have stated objectives and measures about achieving equitable outcomes for all of our constituents, including outcomes for women: academic, professional, leadership, compensation, postgraduate, and other outcomes that are measured, reported, and discussed in the very same strategic conversations about enrollments, academic programs, university rankings, and other metrics of organizational success. In other words, we at Whitworth have put a stake in the ground that says if Whitworth doesn't achieve these important gender equity goals, we are not a successful organization. So I would ask, how is your organization explicitly naming gender equity as a strategic goal and not just a cultural or political artifact? So thanks again for allowing me to participate today and to share a little bit about a subject that I'm very passionate about. Best wishes to all of you, and God bless.
Thank you so much, Beck. Great words. And our third presenter today is Letitia Hill, Vice President for Community and Economic Development, or Vitality, I should say, at Vista Corp. When you think about the word vitality, Letitia's name may well come to mind. Letitia has worked a number of roles at Avista since joining the company in 2005, including operational and business policy support for multiple areas of Avista's service territory. She is a Spokane native and earned a bachelor's degree in communications at Washington State University and a master's degree in urban and regional planning at Eastern Washington University. Go Eags. Most recently, Letitia has led the redevelopment of the University District South Landing that resulted in the Catalyst building that just celebrated its grand opening yesterday. She has served on too many boards to mention here, but they include the Group Health Foundation, Visit Spokane, the University District PDA, Northeast PDA, and the Washington State Transportation Commission, as well as GSI. And I can attest from personal experience that Letitia has been front and center on many economic development initiatives. It's a huge honor to welcome today Letitia Hill.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I'm looking at all these panelists and thinking, this is going to be a great dialogue. So I'm super excited about that. So first, I'm going to say something that's politically incorrect. When I was a child, I did not want to become a leader. I wanted to be a NAIR model. So there's some folks out in the audience that are like, what's a NAIR model? You're Googling it. You don't have to. Let me tell you what it is. So NAIR was a hair lotion remover. Okay, so, and they had these women in bikinis and fancy dresses, and they would run along the beach or up and down the stairs, and they would say, if you dare wear short shorts, NAIR for short shorts. That took some of you guys back. I believe that took some of you back. So I had never worn short shorts. I was never allowed to wear short shorts. I had never been to a beach. However, I did not want to shave, and they had cute outfits, and I also liked to dance. That was why I wanted to be a NAIR model. Now, I tell you that story for two reasons. One is because a dream deferred just ends up and transforms into late night dance parties to jingles in your living room. So I just want you to know that. But more importantly, that I never set out to be a leader. I was told to get a job. I was told to work really, really hard. I was told to be helpful. I was told to be a good girl, and I should smile through the whole thing. My grandfather was actually really perplexed on why it took me so long to pick a major in college. He said, girl, it doesn't even matter. You're just going to get your MRS degree and get out of there. My grandmother said, honey, you're pretty enough to get a man. I don't know why you're working so hard. I love that one. That's one of my favorites. I think these truths are really important when we talk about resilience of women in the workplace. Because I think there are probably folks out there like me who may have learned how to get things done, but not necessarily how to delegate. Perhaps you were celebrated for working really hard, but you never learned how to take a break. Perhaps you trained yourself to be helpful, but you were shamed when you felt like you should say no. Maybe you've smiled through tears as someone questioned your competence, your value, or even your pedigree. So resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. And I think we all do that at multiple levels of our life. But my question in today's world is whether or not we are presenting enough time for us actually to do some of that recovery work. You know, we were all trained to put on our big girl pants, wipe your face, and climb that mountain. But in today's world, we're climbing like the biggest mountain range ever. COVID, unemployment, overtime, childcare, ailing parents, professional development, laundry, mean people. So I question whether we're giving ourselves the space. So I'm asking you to not to assume that resilience is your default, that you're just built for resilience. I am suggesting that, like any other business decision, that you practice intentionality around building resilience, which means that you have to be intentional about the recovery piece at that space. And the truth is, we're all in this together. I really don't care what color you are, how old you are, what industry you're in. If you're living in 2020, you got a resilience challenge. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of examples. Millennials, so that's that generational cohort between 1981 and 96. They're now the largest part of the labor force of the generation. Yet, they also have that distinction of experiencing we'll count them two, once in a lifetime economic catastrophes before the oldest in that generation had ever even turned 40 years old. Okay. According to an August Wall Street Journal article for you baby boomers out there, 58% of baby boomers saw their jobs negatively impacted by COVID-19. Less than half of working Americans over 60 felt that their retirement savings were on track in 2019. And 13% of those baby boomers had no savings at all. And then let's not forget Generation X, because everyone forgets Generation X, and we do exist. Nearly half of Generation X, that famously is called kind of sandwich generation, 50% of those adults in their 40s and 50s have a parent age 65 or older and are either raising a child or financially supporting a grown child that's 18 or over. And about one of those folks, about 15% of those baby boomers, or not baby boomers, of that sandwich generation, Generation Xers, they're also providing financial support for both an aging parent and their older kids. So I say that because it's really hard. And so it is no wonder that when surveyed, while both women and men anticipate that they're going to stay in the workforce over the next 3 years or 3 months, women are nearly twice as likely as their male colleagues to leave their employer within the next year. Why would they do that, you would say? The stress, the challenge, the childcare issues. So what do we do? So Sheryl Sandberg says lean in. And I love a good Sheryl Sandberg, but I also would say sit down, pause, think about it. To build resilience, we've got to do a couple of things. One is we have to set some good limits. I know this flies in the face of a lot of memes and Pinterest gifs that are telling you to just keep going. But remember, if we have no capacity, how can we recover quickly? I want you today to just kind of think about, what are your non-negotiables? Do you have any non-negotiables? No checking your phone after 7 p.m. No email until you finish a morning workout. Dinner with your family at least 3 nights a week. I don't know what they are, but I know you need them. We're not going for perfect here. So for those of you that are going to put this in a spreadsheet, don't give it that much thought, but think about it. Good enough will get it started. The best leaders that I've seen over my time, they make time for themselves. They make time for hobbies. They make time for vacation. You should examine where your bucket is empty and focus on filling it. Now, as much as I think self-reflection is critical, to thine own self be true and all of that, we also have a system of problems that are not serving us well. Prior to COVID, most of us had a 20th century workplace and a 21st century workforce. In 1960, the proportion of all families headed by women was 7.4%. Today, more than 60% of moms are now the sole or co-bread owners of their household. In the 1950s, 65% of all children under the age of 15 were being raised in traditional breadwinner homemaker families. Today, that number is 22%. In fact, 90% of single parent families are headed by women. In the world of COVID, women are essential, not just at home. Women make up nearly 9 out of 10 nurses, nursing assistants, respiratory therapists, a majority of pharmacists, and an overwhelming majority of pharmacy aides and technicians. In fact, when you go to your local grocery store, more than 2/3 of the workers at grocery store checkouts and fast food counters are women. So we as a society must tackle these difficult policy discussions around childcare, around productivity, around schedules and equal pay. It is not enough to be in a resilient system that doesn't give you a chance to catch your breath. Even their models welcomed a commercial break. That's all I have for you today.
Thank you so much, Letitia. You're always right on the mark. Now we have a special shorter tale from the front from Manny Hockheimer, Assistant Vice President of Corporate and External Relations at Numerica Credit Union. Manny has 18 years of experience in the financial industry, including branch administration, regional management, private banking, investments, and government affairs, to name a few. He has been with Numerica since 2012. He earned his bachelor's degree in business management from Colorado State University and an MBA in finance and economics from Whitworth University. Manny also has been very active in the community, serving on a host of boards and committees, including the Washington State University Spokane Chancellor's Advisory Council, United Way's Emerging Leaders Society, and the West Central Community Center. He is married, perhaps his greatest accomplishment, Manny, to Whitworth professor Vange Ocasio-Hockheimer, and is father of two fine boys, Noah and Luca, ages 10 and 8. Please welcome my good friend, Manny Hockheimer.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for acknowledging Vange. As the rest of our panelists always tell me, she's one of the greatest and most patient leaders we've ever known in our life because she's married to you. So there's a lot of truth in that. I was asked today to share a personal story of something that happened in the 2017-2018 school year to Vange and I. Vange, as you know, works for Beck at Whitworth. She's an economist there. And in 2018, in January, she was going to Panama and Costa Rica to take over 20 Whitworth students for sustainable economic development abroad. That meant that I was going to be home raising our two energetic little boys. At that time, they were 6 and 8, Noah and Luca. And also to toss something extra into the mix. At that time, due to the hurricane in Puerto Rico, we were also raising our 15-year-old goddaughter, who was a teenager, 9th grader, that came and moved in with us for the year so that she could continue her schooling. We were out with a couple of Numerica executives, both females, both very accomplished, and both have lived through experiences in their life trying to juggle it all. And when Vange and I were at the table with them and other people, Vange had shared, I'm going to be leaving Manny home alone with the boys, 6 and 8, and our teenage goddaughter to raise them alone for the month of January. First off, everybody kind of laughed and chuckled at the table, but there was good reason for that, because then and there, the two executives at Numerica really made the decision and said to me, we are going to do you a favor, and we're going to put up some guardrails for you to help you and be successful in this journey. They knew at that time that I wasn't the primary caregiver for our children. When it comes to our household, you know, those old economic principles of division and labor and specialization, Vange certainly handled their nutrition, their education, their structure, their schedule. So obviously there was a concern that I would be able to step in and really fulfill that role. And they said, the guardrails we're going to put up for you is you need to fully disconnect, and you can be available for work from 9 a.m. to 3. In that 6 hours, do your work and get it done as impactful as you can, but take the morning to fully launch and concentrate on those children, and take the afternoon to fully engage with them as well. And then when everybody's taken care of, you can catch up on the 2 to 4 hours of work at night. And by sharing that and making that decision for me based on difficulties that they themselves had gone through in life, trying to juggle raising kids and doing that all, they gave me that gift, and that was passed down to me. So my contribution to today was really to get everybody thinking, what can we do more? What can we help? What guardrails can we put up and offer in wisdom, in leadership, and pass that on to the next generation of leaders, especially women in leadership? What can we do? What can you do? That was certainly an impactful lesson in life that I experienced. And I tell you right now, I will do that for somebody else when my time comes and somebody has that same ability. By doing that and by looking outside of the box and empowering our next generation of leaders, specifically the women, we are setting ourselves up to launch them successfully into those things. So again, in closing, are we doing enough? Are you doing enough? Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Manny. Much appreciated. Before we even began planning this year's Women in Leadership event, I knew I wanted to bring back Marty Dickinson, who has long been at the forefront of business and civic life in Spokane and did a great job for us at last year's event. Marty is the Chief Marketing Officer at STCU now, where she is responsible for brand marketing, community relations, government affairs, and facilities. Prior to joining STCU, she served as an executive vice president at Umpqua Bank, where she was charged with integrating 4,500 employees into its progressive culture. She also served in executive capacities at Sterling Savings Bank, which merged with Umpqua, and before that, served as president of the Downtown Spokane Partnership. In previous lives, she worked for several telecom companies. A graduate of Washington State University, Marty serves on WSU's Board of Regents, as well as the boards of the Public Facilities District, Regents Blue Shield Foundation in Washington, and the Association of Washington Business. Among many honors, she was awarded the prestigious YWCA Women of Achievement Award. Today, she is the perfect person to lead us through some audience polling and help us assimilate your responses to 3 questions. Welcome, my friend, Marty Dickinson.
Thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate that. And glad to be here with everybody. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and pull up some polling questions here for everybody. And we'll just kind of go through this. This is, as you know, kind of trial and error. So roll with us as we do these new normal Zoom calls. But Paul and I spent some time this week really trying to kind of think about some questions that would really probe some interesting answers and kind of see where we're at as a community. And so the first question that we are asking is, what is the most important cultural element that drives advancement for women in your workplace? And you can go to your chat here, and you'll also come up and see that you have an opportunity, and we're looking for one answer from you guys. So if you can just put in one of the following. Leadership demonstrates clear support and action through policies and practices. Gender diversity goals are established and measured annually. Flexible work environment is available to all employees, and representation of women at the C-suite level. So if you can complete your answer and submit that, we would appreciate it. We'll give that a moment here. Okay, results. I mean, this is kind of fun, isn't it? This is kind of fun. You get a chance to kind of see this stuff real time. So, you know, when I think I hate Zoom, I kind of start to like it. So anyways, okay. So 49% of you, leadership demonstrates clear support and action through policies and practices. 8% believe gender diversity goals are established and measured annually. Interesting. 22% flexible work environment is available to all employees. And then 20% representation of women at the C-suite level. So I think one thing that's really interesting here, for those of us that have opportunity to influence action, policy, and practice, we should be taking that back when 49% of our audience is leaning in that direction. Okay, next question that we're going to move to is, with the pandemic changing, how and where we work, gosh knows that's a difference, right? How and where we work, what do you believe the impacts are from a flexible work options or working from home? Do you believe that they're the great equalizer for women? Do you believe they're actually increasing work-family conflict and additional burden on women? Do you believe that they further reduce the face-to-face networking, which makes it harder for women to see career advancement opportunities? And or do you believe they allow women to demonstrate their ability to multitask while being able to accomplish great things? It's a great question, I think. Very relevant for the space we are all in at this time. Interesting. Okay, so only 4% believe it's the great equalizer for women. 49% actually feel that it increases the work-family conflict and additional burden on women. 17% believe they further reduce face-to-face networking, which makes it harder for women to see career advancement opportunities. And 31% say it allows women to demonstrate their ability to multitask while being able to accomplish great things. So again, somewhere there's a sweet spot for a lot of the leaders that are on this call around how to assist women, in particular, juggle and manage, while also recognizing that there's some great opportunities for them to multitask and show their skills, as both Letitia and Patricia alluded to. So what does your organization do today to support, empower, and eliminate barriers for women? Does your organization promote women at the same rate as men? Do they clearly communicate and support women to access company gender policies and practices without perhaps having any blowback on that? Does the organization exhibit strong leadership, role modeling, and support for gender equality? Does your organization educate all employees on diversity, conflict, and bias? Or do you feel as though they do none of the above? All right, what does your organization do today to support, empower, and eliminate barriers for women? 14% of you say it promotes women at the same rate as men. That's a pretty low number. It clearly communicates and supports women to access company gender policies and practice at 4%. We got some work to do there. Good news that many companies appear to exhibit strong leadership, role modeling, and support for gender equality. It's 43%. It educates employees on diversity, conflict, and bias at 25%. And that's a big number, really, if people are feeling that their organization at 14% are doing none of the above. So we probably, as a community here and from a business standpoint, certainly have some work to do in that space. What I would say as I kind of look and help to wrap up today is you heard wear a red dress. And I love that because I have a pair of red boots that I always wear, and I feel so empowered when I wear those. You hear to be courageous through Beck Taylor, and Beck finds himself in constant situations having to be courageous in his leadership decision, and then empowering the women around him to do that. And I would say that anybody that gets to work with people from Whitworth, you will absolutely feel the culture and the courage that comes, in particular, from the women in that institution, because you just can't find one that isn't just awesome. You know, we all know we need to shave our legs, some probably more than others, some days more so than other days, but what your message, you know, Letitia, around building resilience is really, really important. And that concept of sitting down, because none of us are wired to sit down. I mean, Lindsay and I like look at each other each day, and one of us has to tell the other, like, sit down, breathe. It's okay. We've got this. We can do this. And that's important. And I say that out loud because women need other women to, and I said it last year and I'm going to say it again, women need other women to support them and to lift them up and to say, you know what, I'll stand up while you sit down, and it's not going to be a detriment to you because I'm going to sit right back down when it's your turn to stand up. And we have to do more of that as females for each other in lieu of kind of the situation and the world we're living in at the moment. And then, you know, when you talk about guardrails, Manny, and what can you do and what can we do? Something that I am trying to take on, that I have tried to be very intentional about, and I'm not great at it. Some days I'm really good at it. Other days I'm not so great at it. And it is establishing an emotional steadiness. As a leader, as a mother, as a friend, can I create a cadence of emotional steadiness? Because all of these things that you've all talked about here today actually require a steadiness, and it's about emotion, because people are struggling right now and they are getting pulled in so many different directions, and women in particular. And somebody, doesn't have to be you every single day, because some days I can walk away and think I was a completely stable, non-hot mess today. And then other days I will see Letitia and have a giant glass of wine and say, this is like, I am just not, I'm not doing so great. And so that emotional steadiness and borrowing it from others, but also trying to lead through these times with a steady hand, a steady heart, and a steady vision will ultimately, I think, empower and lift up a lot of women, and lift up yourself if you're seeking those opportunities as a female leader. So, Paul, thank you so much for the opportunity to do this today, and thank you very much to our panelists, and just really great nuggets. If Zoom's teaching us anything, it's brevity with some really good stuff.
Thank you so much, Marty. Thanks for taking us through that exercise. And boy, you're right. There's much work to do. Those answers clearly told us that. But you know what? It's one of those things I believe that we have to continue to talk about, and we'll continue to have these conversations as long as you feel they're important. We certainly do. Before we conclude today, I want to once again thank our sponsors, STCU, Avista Corp, Innovia Foundation, and Gonzaga's Women Lead Program. Thank you all so much. I wish we had this great audience in the banquet hall that we could all clap for you one more time, but thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thanks also to our presenters today, Patricia McCrae, Beck Taylor, Letitia Hill, Manny Hockheimer, and of course, Marty Dickinson, as well as our great Girl Scouts, Addie and Ariana DeCaro. Thank you. I'd also like to thank the Committee of Women and Men who helped guide me in the content for this event. You see their names on the screen. They worked very hard, and they were candid with me, and I so much appreciate their wisdom in helping guide this event. And before we go, I have door prizes to award. 3 lucky people will get a free registration to the 4th Annual Women Lead Conference, to be hosted virtually by Gonzaga University on September 30. It will include a dynamic lineup of presentations, skill building workshops, networking, and inspirational speakers. The tickets are valued at $179 each. We'll send you information on how to claim your prize. And the winners are Lori Walters of Washington Trust Bank, Christina Pettit of Post Falls Chamber of Commerce, and Beth Winter of Pyrotech. Congratulations, each of you. You'll be hearing from us soon. Lastly, thank you all for joining us today. It's my sincere hope that you will leave this virtual event thinking about how we together can meet the challenges of getting more women into leadership roles. Together is a powerful word these days. Let's also work together to move through this pandemic, to get past our political differences, and to move our community forward. Be kind to everyone you meet and have optimism for the future. Until we meet again, know that we are blessed to be in Spokane. Have a great day. We are adjourned.